Let's dive straight in.
Charlemagne.
January 28th, 814.
Aachen, Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne was 71 years old, the most powerful king in Europe. For decades, he fought wars, built schools, and ruled a vast empire. By the winter of 813, his health started failing. He complained of constant fevers, pain in his chest, and difficulty breathing. On January 21st, he fell seriously ill. His doctors advised rest, but Charlemagne refused heavy treatment. He insisted on fasting, eating little more than water and broth. The illness grew worse. He could barely walk and spent most of his time in bed. At dawn on January 28th, he rose weakly, prayed, and tried to eat. Within hours, his condition collapsed. He developed high fever, severe chest pain, and shallow breaths. Witnesses said he became delirious, barely speaking. By midday, he slipped into unconsciousness. At around noon, Charlemagne died. The cause was pleurisy, fluid around the lungs, leading to suffocation. His body was carried to the cathedral he built in Aachen. He was buried the same day, sitting upright on a throne, sword in hand, crown on his head. The empire mourned. His death marked the end of a unified Western Europe. After him, the kingdom split among his sons, triggering centuries of wars. The blunt outcome: Europe's greatest king died gasping for air, leaving an empire too large to last. William the Conqueror.
September 9th, 1087.
Rouen, France. William, the first Norman king of England, was 59 years old. Years of battle left him obese and sickly. That summer, he invaded France and sacked the city of Mantes. During the fight, his horse stumbled. The saddle crushed his stomach against the iron pommel. At first, he ignored the injury. But infection set in. His belly swelled. The wound festered. His men rushed him to Rouen, but the pain was unbearable. He lay in a monastery, sweating and cursing. For weeks, doctors tried to treat him with poultices and bleeding. Nothing worked. His stomach rotted from the inside. By early September, the smell of decay filled the room. Priests gathered, hearing his last confession. On September 9th, William died in agony. When attendants tried to close his coffin, his swollen body burst. The stench drove mourners away. It was a humiliating end for the conqueror of England. Aftermath was chaos. His soldiers looted his possessions. His body was barely buried with dignity. The blunt outcome: a king who ruled two nations died bloated and broken, remembered as much for his gruesome end as his victories. Richard the Lionheart.
April 6th, 1199.
Limousin, France. Richard I of England was known for his courage. But his death came from carelessness. In March 1199, he besieged a small castle at Calais. The defenders were poorly armed, but Richard mocked them. He walked close to the walls, inspecting. A boy on the battlements fired a crossbow. The bolt struck Richard in the left shoulder, near the neck. The wound didn't seem fatal. He laughed, pulled it out, and kept fighting. But medieval medicine was brutal. The arrow was dirty, the wound deep. Surgeons dug into his flesh with knives, trying to clean it. The wound became infected. His arm swelled, fever rose, and pus drained constantly. Within days, gangrene spread. Richard turned pale, weak, and delirious. By April 6th, he knew he was dying. He forgave the boy who shot him, but ordered him executed anyway. Hours later, Richard died in his tent. He was 41. His death shocked Europe. The great crusader king fell not in battle against armies, but to a lucky shot from a peasant boy. The blunt outcome: one arrow ended the Lionheart. Edward II of England.
September 21st, 1327.
Berkeley Castle, England. Edward II had been forced off the throne by his wife, Queen Isabella, and her lover, Roger Mortimer. At 43 years old, he was imprisoned in Berkeley Castle. His rule had collapsed after years of military failures and political chaos. For months, he was kept under guard. Rumors spread he was abused, starved, and humiliated. Supporters tried to free him, but failed. Isabella and Mortimer wanted him gone for good. On the night of September 21st, guards entered his chamber. No records agree on how it happened. Some said he was strangled. Others claimed a red-hot poker was shoved inside him to leave no visible wounds. By morning, Edward was dead. His body showed no clear marks, fueling centuries of speculation. His captors announced he had died naturally. Few believed it. He was buried at Gloucester Abbey. His son became Edward III and later executed Mortimer for the crime. The blunt outcome: an English king was quietly murdered, his death forever shrouded in brutality and rumor. Richard III of England,
August 22nd, 1485.
Bosworth Field, England. Richard III, last of the Plantagenets, was 32. He rode into battle against Henry Tudor, determined to hold his crown. His army outnumbered Henry's, but betrayal was waiting. As the battle raged, Richard saw Henry's standard nearby. He charged across the field with a small band of knights. For a moment, it looked like he would kill Henry and end the rebellion. But his allies, the Stanley family, turned against him. Richard's horse got stuck in a marsh. Surrounded, he fought on foot. Witnesses said he killed several men before he was dragged down. Blows rained on him: swords, axes, and halberds. His helmet was smashed open. A blade pierced his skull. Richard died in the mud, crown lost. His naked body was tied to a horse and paraded. For centuries, his grave was lost until archaeologists found his skeleton under a parking lot in 2012. The blunt outcome: England's last king to die in battle was hacked to death, betrayed at the crucial moment. Henry VIII of England,
January 28, 1547.
Whitehall Palace, London. Henry VIII was 55, obese, and sick. Once a tall, athletic king, years of indulgence left him with rotting legs, gout, and infections. He could barely walk, carried around on a chair. His doctors tried everything: bandages, ointments, endless meals. Nothing worked. His ulcers oozed constantly, the smell unbearable. By winter, his body was failing. He suffered fevers, swelling, and constant pain. On the night of January 27th, he slipped into a coma. Priests were called, but he never regained consciousness. Early morning, January 28th, Henry VIII died. His coffin was so large it barely fit through doors. During transport, the casket cracked open. Blood and fluid leaked onto the floor of a church. Dogs licked it up, horrifying witnesses. Henry left behind 6 wives, 3 children, and a kingdom forever changed by his break from Rome. The blunt outcome: England's most infamous king died bloated and stinking, a victim of his own excess. Louis XIV of France,
September 1st, 1715.
Versailles, France. Louis XIV, the Sun King, ruled France for 72 years. By his late 70s, he was frail and sick. In August 1715, he developed a sore on his leg. Doctors thought it was minor. It wasn't. The sore turned black, gangrene. Surgeons tried cutting away the flesh. The rot spread. His leg smelled of death. For weeks, he endured excruciating pain, his skin wasting away. Courtiers whispered in terror as the most powerful king in Europe lay rotting alive. On August 26th, priests gave him last rites. He lingered, half-conscious, groaning. His body grew thinner each day, eaten by infection. On the morning of September 1st, at 8:15, he died in Versailles. He was 76. Crowds outside the palace cheered his death, tired of endless wars and taxes. Inside, courtiers wept for the man who made France a global power. The blunt outcome: Europe's longest reigning monarch died in agony, consumed by gangrene. Peter the Great of Russia,
February 8, 1725.
St. Petersburg, Russia. Peter the Great, Tsar of Russia, spent his life reforming his empire. But in his last years, his health collapsed. He suffered from urinary blockages. By late 1724, the pain was constant. In January 1725, he caught a fever after rescuing soldiers from icy water. The infection worsened his condition. He could barely pass urine, screaming in pain. Surgeons tried to drain him. The procedure failed. His abdomen swelled, poisoned from within. On February 7th, he slipped in and out of consciousness. That night, he tried to dictate his will but collapsed mid-sentence. By dawn, he was delirious, gasping for breath. On February 8th, at 52 years old, Peter died in his palace. He left no clear successor. Russia plunged into political chaos, starting decades of intrigue. The blunt outcome: the man who dragged Russia into modern Europe died screaming, undone by his own failing body. Charles XII of Sweden,
November 30th, 1718.
Fredrikstad, Norway. Charles XII was a warrior king, always in battle. At 36, he was besieging a fortress in Norway. On the night of November 30th, he inspected the trenches under fire. At around 9 p.m., he lifted his head over the trench wall. A bullet struck him in the head. Witnesses said he dropped instantly, dead before hitting the ground. Some believed it came from the enemy fortress. Others whispered it was fired from his own men, tired of endless war. His skull showed a perfect hole, but the shooter was never proven. Soldiers smuggled his body back to Sweden in secrecy. His death ended Sweden's empire as a great power. The blunt outcome: a king who lived by the sword died by a single bullet, his empire dying with him.
Napoleon Bonaparte. May 5th, 1821.
Longwood House, St. Helena. Napoleon, once Emperor of France, was exiled on the remote island of St. Helena. At 51, he was a shadow of himself, overweight and sick. For months, he suffered stomach pains, nausea, and weakness. Doctors tried treatments, bleeding, mercury, herbal remedies. Nothing worked. He vomited blood and grew weaker by the day. Some suspected slow poisoning with arsenic. Others believed stomach cancer. On May 3rd, he dictated his last will, naming his son as heir. By May 5th, he could barely breathe. His last words were, "France Army. Josephine." At 5:49 p.m. he died. Witnesses said his face looked peaceful. His body was autopsied, showing ulcers and cancer. The arsenic theory lingers to this day. The blunt outcome: Europe's greatest general died sick and broken, thousands of miles from his empire.
Nicholas II of Russia. July 17, 1918.
Ekaterinburg, Russia. Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, was held prisoner with his family after the revolution. By July 1918, Bolshevik guards knew rescue was possible. They decided to end it. At 2 a.m., Nicholas, his wife, children, and servants were woken and led to a basement. They were told it was for their safety. Suddenly, armed men entered. Without warning, they opened fire. The room filled with bullets and screams. Nicholas was shot multiple times in the chest. His daughters survived the first volley, hidden by diamonds sewn in their dresses, but were stabbed with bayonets. Within 20 minutes, the Romanovs were dead. Their bodies were burned with acid and buried in a forest. The blunt outcome: the Russian monarchy ended in gunfire, the last Tsar executed in a basement.
King Alexander I of Yugoslavia. October 9, 1934.
Marseille, France. Alexander I was on a state visit to France. At 4:20 p.m., he rode through Marseille in an open car with French officials. Crowds lined the streets. A man stepped forward, pistol hidden. He was Vlado Chernozemski, a revolutionary. He fired at point-blank range. Bullets struck Alexander in the chest and stomach. The king collapsed instantly. Blood poured onto the seat. He died within minutes, in front of thousands. The French foreign minister beside him was also killed. The assassin was cut down by police and mobbed by the crowd. The attack was filmed, one of the first assassinations ever caught on camera. The blunt outcome: a European king gunned down in broad daylight, his death broadcast worldwide.
King George VI. February 6, 1952.
Sandringham, England. George VI had battled poor health for years. He smoked heavily, and lung cancer ate away at him. In 1951, surgeons removed his left lung. He looked pale, thin, and weak. On the night of February 5th, he went to bed at Sandringham. Nothing seemed unusual. By morning, his servants found him still in bed, not breathing. He was 56. The cause: coronary thrombosis, a blood clot stopping his heart. His sudden death shocked the nation. His daughter, Princess Elizabeth, immediately became Queen Elizabeth II. The blunt outcome: a chain smoker king died quietly in his sleep, his crown passing to the longest reigning queen in British history.
King Baudouin. July 31st, 1993.
Modril, Spain. Baudouin was 62 and vacationing in southern Spain. He seemed healthy that morning, attending Mass with his wife. That evening, around 9:30 p.m., he complained of chest pain. Within minutes, he collapsed from a massive heart attack. Doctors rushed to his villa, but could not save him. He was declared dead before midnight. His death stunned Belgium. He had no children, so the throne passed to his brother, Albert II. Crowds filled Brussels in mourning. The blunt outcome: a Belgian king died suddenly on holiday, leaving a nation leaderless overnight.
King Charles III. December 14, 1788.
Madrid, Spain. Charles III ruled Spain for nearly 30 years. By 1788, He was 72 and frail. Tuberculosis plagued him. He coughed blood, lost weight, and weakened daily. In early December, he grew bedridden. Priests gave last rites. His court gathered around, powerless. On December 14th, after days of fever and suffocation, Charles died in his palace. Spain mourned deeply. He had modernized the country, but left a fragile successor. His death marked the decline of Spain's empire. The blunt outcome: the reformer king of Spain died choking on his lungs, another monarch undone by disease.